be largely a page flipping video. As you can tell, I'm in a new location today in my living room, and the setup is different, so you can really focus on the book. But because of that, you're probably going to see less of my face, but hopefully that's okay with you. You see my face all the time. Okay, so again, real quick, we are going to read the occult book, A Chronological Journey from Alchemy to Wicca by John Michael Greer. So let's simply dive in. I'll read a little bit throughout, and I hope you enjoy this video with some nice page flipping triggers. I have my little glass skull, and I have this lovely scented candle with some crystals up front, and I will be sipping on some cranberry juice from this spooky skeleton glass. So let's get started. The world is not prepared yet to understand the philosophy of occult sciences. Let them assure themselves first of all that there are beings that there are beings in an invisible world, whether spirits of the dead or elementals, and that there are hidden powers in man which are capable of making a god of him on earth. H.P. Blavatsky, born in 1831, died in 1891. The gates of the mystery stand ever ajar, and those who will may pass through into the spacious domicile of spirit. Manly be all the secret teachings of all ages. Let's read a little bit about the origin of the tarot. Playing cards reached Europe from the Muslim world in the 14th century, but the first decks known in the Western world were like modern playing cards with 4 numbered was Marziano da Tortona, the personal secretary of Filippo Maria Visconti, Duke of Milan, and an essay about the new cards that he wrote for the Duke in 1418 still survives. The additional cards in Marziano's new deck weren't the same as the standard tarot sequence. They were ancient Greek deities, 16 of them meant to represent virtues and vices. His invention, though, inspired others to make new decks with symbols of their own choosing. Since the sequence of emblems resembled nothing so much as the floats in the grand parades that were a common event in the Renaissance Italy, the name of those parades, Triumphi or triumphs, after the triumphal processions of ancient Rome, came to be used for the symbolic cards. Tarot readers today still call them trumps. By 1415 or so, card players in Milan had settled on the 22 trumps used today, and cards painted around that year are recognizable forerunners of the modern tarot deck. Other Italian cities developed similar decks, but it was the Milanese deck that traveled with merchants to Marseille in France, which would become the most important center of tarot manufacture. By the early 1800s, tarot had become a common card game all over France, Switzerland, and northern Italy, as common as poker in the United States today. Only in a few places was it used for fortune-telling, though, and it would take a pair of French occultists to transform it into the most important divination system in modern occultism. So that is the origin of the tarot, which began in 1418. Let's keep going. Spells for the Pope, 1628. Cold terror must have passed through the renegade friar when the messengers of the Pope arrived at his humble dwelling in Rome. Tommaso Campanella had every reason to fear the power of the Catholic Church. He had been in prison twice for hearsay, and a third time for leading a rebellion against Spanish rule in southern Italy, a rising in which Campanella's occultism played a central role. While in prison the third time, he had written a utopian book, Civitas Solis, the City of the Sun, in which he expounded a vision of a perfect society governed by astrological magic. None of this was likely to endear him to the Church against spirits. But the Witchcraft Act of 1736 completely transformed the legal climate in which British occultists had to live. It ended witch trials and made it a crime to accuse someone of witchcraft. It also redefined occultism as fraud, stating that those who pretend to exercise or use any kind of witchcraft, sorcery, enchantment, or conjuration, or undertake to tell fortunes, risk a year in prison. All over Europe, the great tide of persecution was ebbing at last. England saw in its last execution for witchcraft in 1682, Scotland in 1722, France in 1745, Germany in 1775, and Switzerland in 1782. People of goodwill throughout the Western world, sickened by the religious wars and witchcraft trials of the 17th century, turned away from traditional religious beliefs and embraced the newly minted rationalist philosophies of the Enlightenment. For rationalists, the old laws condemning witchcraft made easy targets for denunciation. Under the new legislation, people could study occultism without ruining the risk of witchcraft trial, and the abolition of press censorship in England in 1695 already had sparked a boom in books and pamphlets on occult lore. In the decades that followed the passage of the Witchcraft Act, that boom expanded to include serious textbooks of occult theory and practice. A great many occult practices, however, remained illegal, and though the parts of the Witchcraft Act that prohibited magic and fortune-telling was rarely enforced, occultists who were too public about their activities sometimes faced prosecution. Similar laws went on in the books of most Western countries and remained enforced well into the 20th century, forcing occultists to remain silent about their activities or risk jail. In 1994, Scottish medium Ellen Duncan became the last person imprisoned under the Witchcraft Act, which was finally repealed in 1951. 1951. Fascinating. Houdini battles fake mediums, 1924. By the 1920s, spiritualism had become a familiar part of the religious scene all over the Western world. Spiritualist churches could be found in most cities, and there were also resort towns that catered to the spiritualist trade, attracting hundreds of thousands of believers to summer events that combined recreation with seances. The most successful mediums claimed that the spirits that communicated through them could ring bells at a distance, write messages in chalk on sealed slates, and even manifest hands and other body parts made of a substance called ectoplasm. The difficulty was that many of those claims depended on outright fraud. In 1924, a Smithsonian Institution committee called to investigate the famous medium Mina Grandin invited Harry Houdini to join them. Houdini's real name was Eric Weiss, and he was one of the most famous American stage magicians and escape artists, renowned for his ability to extract himself from handcuffs, straitjackets, and even more elaborate restraints. He accepted the invitation eagerly and went to Boston with the others to observe Grandin at work. What he saw convinced Houdini that she was a deliberate faker, using a variety of stage magic tricks to produce the effects that made her clients think she was communicating with spirits and deflecting criticism with her personal charms. She liked to do seances in the nude and had torrid affairs with several researchers who investigated her claims. Unlike previous skeptics, Houdini wasn't content to put his objections into print. Instead, he went on the vaudeville circuit, doing performances in which he demonstrated exactly how fake mediums performed their supposed miracles. His campaign to expose fraudulent mediums was enormously successful, and along with increasingly harsh criticism in the media, it helped turn spiritualism from a mass movement to a fringe phenomenon. It's pretty cool. But I'm going to flip some more pages and probably read one or two more passages. That was over 200 pages we just went through, but it went so quickly, didn't it? those years, including the mysterious Fulcanelli. As the clouds of war gathered over Europe again, he immigrated to California, where he soon became involved in the ancient mystical order Rosicrucis, AMORC. During the war years, he attended classes in practical alchemy at the AMORC headquarters in San Jose. He later moved to Salt Lake City, Utah, but continued his alchemical studies. In 1960, he founded a school named the Paracelsus Research Society, PRS, after the famous alchemist and healer, and he published The Alchemist's Handbook, the first widely available introduction to practical laboratory alchemy. Frater Albertus, as he preferred to call himself, made spagyrics, alchemical herbal medicine, central to the PRS curriculum and provided elementary instructions in several spagyric operations in his book. Both the school and the book were well timed. Herbal medicine was beginning to catch a new wave of popularity in 1960, and interest in the occult was also on the upswing. The next 2 decades saw the emergence of a thriving alchemical subculture in the United States and elsewhere in the Western world. By the early 1980s, the Paracelsus Research Society had been renamed Paracelsus College, and Frater Albertus was preparing to found an actual college with its own campus of Gothic-style buildings, supported by the sale of spagyric medicines. By the early 1980s, the Paracelsus Research Society had been renamed Paracelsus College, and Frater Albertus was preparing to found an actual college with its own campus of Gothic-style buildings, supported by the sale of spagyric medicines. I don't know if I'm saying that word right. I don't know what it means. His death in 1984 ended those hopes, and Paracelsus College closed not long afterward. By then, though, alchemy had resumed its traditional place among the major disciplines of the occult tradition. Let's read one more, and then do a little bit more of the page flipping. Wicca goes mainstream, 1979. The books were published on the same day, October 31st, 1979, on opposite ends of the United States. In Boston, Beacon Press released Margot Adler's Drawing Down the Moon, a journalistic survey of the American neo-pagan counterculture. In San Francisco, Harper issued The Spiral Dance, an introduction to Wicca by a neo-pagan named Starhawk. Their simultaneous appearance marked the coming of age of Wicca as a pop culture phenomenon. The Wicca that took center stage in those books, and the thousands of others that followed them into print, had changed dramatically since Gerald Gardner's day. What had been a secretive tradition passed on by personal initiation and concerned mostly with magic changed to a highly public religious movement that anyone could join by reading a few books, and it traded in much of its serious magical content for more familiar kinds of self-empowerment. Thus reshaped, it found an immediate audience throughout the English-speaking world. For the first decade or so after Wicca found its feet as a pop culture phenomenon, the historical mythology created by Margaret Murray and Gerald Gardner, the claim that modern Wicca is the old religion, directly descended from pagan cults of the Middle Ages that had nearly been exterminated in the Burning Times, was treated as historical fact by most of the neo-pagans. Gradually, however, the weight of historical evidence and negative publicity led influential Wiccans to abandon that claim. Similar motives led many of them back away from occultism and began a second reinvention of Wicca as a respectable religious denomination with paid clergy. In the meantime, though, the Wiccan phenomenon and pop culture made it possible for many other traditions to publicize themselves and attract a new generation of students, and many branches of occultism benefited stories, the Book of the Law, modern day Wicca, and more. With the turn of every page, you will encounter beautiful artwork and intriguing insights about the occult, an astonishing story of suppression, survival, and rebirth, extending over more than 2.5 millennia. So that about covers it. This is what the cover looks like. It's really pretty. And I wanted to read that overview just because we only made it through a very small number of these topics. So I hope you enjoyed what we did cover. I just picked sort of the basics. Again, I wanted this to focus mostly on page flipping. I haven't done one of those in a while, but I thought this would be fun to incorporate. So there we have it, and then I'll just make a few more tapping sounds, I think. My long nails are back, so I should probably use them. This lovely candle. Spooky. Spooky, spooky. And then I have this little pumpkin back here. And then I just have some pillows, but those are not really gonna make the best noise, I don't think. But that's okay. Scratchy, scratchy. Okay. Well, I think that covers it for this video, you guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully you're not too sick of all of the Halloween-themed videos yet. I will be doing probably one more, and then it will be back to the regular scheduled content. But, you know, I just had to mix it up this month, so hope you're enjoying it. Let me know if you do, and feel free to like, comment, and subscribe so we can continue to stay connected. Other than that, I hope you all are well and enjoying this fall season, and I will be back very soon.